change it whenever I want. All right, let's get into it, baby.
Sweet.
Going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Mix It Up with ML, episode 2. And today is a very exciting episode with my good friend, RJ Hernandez, who had a wonderful impact on my Princeton experience. So just super excited to have him on the pod. Welcome, RJ.
What's going on, my brother? Thank you for having me. It's my first ever podcast. I am super pumped. I've been listening to podcasts especially during the pandemics, like way more than I ever have. So when you hit me up about this, I was like, I'm in. Let's do it. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, RJ was super willing, and so I'm really excited to have him on. We were joking around. We don't know how we're gonna keep this to an hour, but we're gonna try, brother. We're gonna try. I don't know, but we got a lot to talk about. So I figured we could just jump right in. And like the way I started the first one, I don't even know if I'm going to keep doing this, but I think it's a good way to start. It's just to explain to our listeners, sort of how we met and our backstory, just so they have a little context to this conversation.
Yeah, so we met, it was my sophomore year in undergrad. You were a freshman. You had tried out for the club basketball team. We brought you on. And just through club basketball, man, we just clicked pretty immediately on that first tournament that we had.
Yes, sir.
And you were kind of in the same, I think, boat as me in terms of you were still hungry to get after it, to play competitively. And that was what you really wanted to get out of the club experience. I know that was what I had wanted, and definitely wasn't what I think either of us felt
we walked into
that year. But then the following year, I had taken over as captain, and I remember I worked a lot with you, with one of our other great friends, Jared, a lot, and we entered into the National Club League. We really got it rocking and rolling, and and we had a great year that year. We had a lot of fun, and I mean, then I was super amped that I got you to join the eating club with me. We had a lot of great memories there, and I mean, and we just kind of let it ride, and we had a great college experience together. So,
absolutely, yeah. RJ's impact on my college experience can't be understated. Because of that, I think like the club basketball part was just, super big for me, because I was just kind of dejected, honestly. Freshman year, came into Princeton and was like, all into basketball. And then we didn't play many games that freshman. It was just that one tournament that we went to, I think, at Harvard. And that was it, dude.
Then I think we picked up like a late season game against Penn, which was
fun. Yeah. Yep.
And then I'm pretty sure that was also the night that I got back, and I was like super dehydrated, and then went out on the town.
Yeah.
And was definitely really banged up because
Yep. Yeah, dude. So that first year, and then your leadership, you were the one who spearheaded that entry into the NCBBA, so the national conference. So I was super grateful for that. And then I just tried to help out, bro. And, that was awesome. I remember I talked to my mom, right? Because I was thinking do I want to play D3 basketball, or do I want to try to walk on at a D1 school?
Right.
And I tried to at Princeton. That didn't work out too well. And so one of the things my mom was saying was even if you don't play basketball in college, for D1 walk on or D3, you can always do club basketball, because they have this great national tournament in Ohio. So my mom knew all about this, and I was like, yeah, all right, mom, whatever. And then you made it happen, dude. So that was awesome.
Yeah, I remember when I kind of similar was, I think, junior year in high school, maybe late junior year, early senior. I got to the point where I was like, I had always knew that Princeton was my dream school. If I got in, I'm going there.
Right.
And I got to the point too where I was like, I don't really want to play in college, at least at that level. But I was like, wherever I go, I'm gonna do club basketball. I hear that it's competitive. I hear that you still play against other schools. So my first 2 years, man, I was definitely a little bummed with what that experience had been, and I was just looking to really try to take the bull by the horns and make something happen. And I mean, what was so fun about it too for me as a junior, as the captain, I got to be obviously the player coach.
Right.
And that was such a crazy learning experience for me, I think, too, because first of all, it's hard balancing coaching while I'm playing on the floor with you guys. And I mean, so our starting five that year was filthy.
Yeah.
We had you, we had Jeb, our buddy Jeb Helmers, who was absolutely lights out. Our buddy James Boyd, who was like the Energizer Bunny, offense, defense. He's all over the floor. And then as the season progressed, our Jared, who we mentioned earlier, he was a freshman at the time. He really started to come along. And I'm throwing freshmen, our starting lineup, sophomores at the time. And it was great. And we had a deep team. We were like 11 or 12 deep, man. And I remember, so we ended up like just riding it out. We won our division. We, go into the national tourney. We hosted home for the regionals. We won our first 2 regional games. Now we're in the Elite 8. We're like, what is going on here?
We had to fundraise to get to Indiana.
we have 24 hours to pull together.
3K? What was it, like 3+?
We ended up pulling together. So I get the notification that we got to get to South Bend, Indiana. So I immediately get in contact with, and this is in a week. Mm-hmm. And I immediately get in contact with Mitch. He was the guy who ran the club sports department. And I was like, what kind of funding can I get from you for this? And he was basically like, well, in your guys' account, we really don't have a ton. We had I think maybe $800 at the time. Mm-hmm. And we for us to send, I think we ended up sending 12 dudes, was going to cost like $4,800.
Yeah.
And to schedule those plane tickets on such short notice, it was expensive. And we had to get that done in the next 2 or 3 days so that they could even know if we were going to be able to make it to the Elite 8. Or else we were going to be driving, man. We were going to be renting cars and we were going to be taking a 10-hour drive.
Yeah. Brutal.
But we were able to make it all work, which was great. I remember the 12 of us were just like, hit your friends up, hit your family up. And we pulled together $6,000 in 24 hours.
Oh, it was 6. I didn't even know that was the final figure, bro. I thought it was like 3,600 or something. We got $6K.
It was, I had like my old basketball coaches hitting me up, giving me like $400.
Yeah.
Like, my God, like, thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
So we get to South Bend and they did it, they did it right. They treated us kind of like it was real college hoops. We were in the locker rooms. And at that point too, I remember from the player coach perspective, it was hard because I wanted to run with, especially, what was working in the game. Mm-hmm. And, I didn't want to go so deep in terms of rotation, but these dudes also helped get all this money together, helped us get out here for the experience. So I want to balance those minutes. I want to obviously let you guys get some good time. And that was tough. And then I remember I fell out of our Elite 8 game, of course, matched up against Harvard because they
early in the second half, right? You felt like 10 minutes ago.
I think there were about 5 or 6 minutes left.
Oh, 5 or 6. Okay.
But it felt like an eternity. And that was the first time all season that I kind of really felt like I was in full coach mode. And we're down, I don't remember all the details exactly in that last minute, but we were down, I think at one point like 6, and we had 5 timeouts, I remember, for the game. And I think we hadn't used any.
Right.
So I'm managing the clock with those timeouts. And I remember we get the ball down 1 and Jeb had 45 that game. So I
was like the next highest scorer with like 12. I feel like I had like 10 or 12.
Yeah. And I think I had like 8 or 10 in my like 15 minutes out of, the foul trouble that I actually was on the floor. But I knew he was getting tripled off the inbound here. So I remember we set up a whole backdoor screen for McGroovy and our buddy Nick McGreevy, we called him McGroovy. And the play works flawlessly. He gets to the cup, misses the layup, gets his own rebound, misses the contested putback, and then one of the freshmen who I threw in,
Chuck, right? It was Chuck,
athlete. It was
Emmanuel
flies in for the tip in, and it just there was a lid on the bucket. We couldn't get the bucket, and we ended up losing by 1. And I remember I'm getting texts from our friends back at school because they had done a live Facebook broadcast of the game. So we had a bunch of friends watching, and they were like, yo, the announcers were saying you were doing such a good job coaching at the end, like, way to go. And that was such a fun, rewarding experience, like, to be in that role specifically. Mm-hmm. And that game, man, dude, it's like a nightmare and a blessing all at the same time for me still, like, because we were right there. It was a great experience and great memories. So
And we were up big, bro. So it was tough to lose it, but
Yeah, we were up like 15, I think, at the end of the first half.
they just caught fire
But
though.
and I think the only reason I've never been able to swallow that game outside of that loss, outside of obviously being right there, is that one of our starters, James Boyd, he couldn't come to the
Oh
trip. I don't
yeah.
remember what he had going on campus, but he wasn't going to be able to come for the long weekend. So if we had our full lineup, we had him in the lineup, I think we win it. I really do.
It's just like a what if, right? I think we win that game, and who knows about the next one, right? Like,
Well, and then I remember too, the other thing that we like couldn't believe was we're going there and like Michigan and like Ohio State are there, and we're like, yo, we're just like
we're
Princeton.
Princeton, like just some
We don't
nerds out
belong
here.
here. This is like huge imposter syndrome. We don't belong here. And then Harvard in the semis beat Michigan in overtime.
And then they got to the chip and lost to Ohio State or something
Yeah,
like that.
and then the other what if is, we totally, it looks like could have hung because we hung with Harvard.
Right.
So
Pain, dude.
Pain. What's it called? That gif that the guy
Will Smith. Or Stephen A.
Gif where he's like looking out the window. Yeah. It's just like the tweet pain. That one kills me all the time.
That was the exact feeling. But I like what you said, sort of, kind of going back to what we were saying earlier, that this was, what we were hoping for out of our college experience, because we knew we weren't going to play, D1 or even D3. And so it was just nice to be able to have that experience where we could play at the national level and just go to feel like it was, real college basketball again. And
without a doubt. And then I remember my senior year, I mean, I gave the reins over to you guys, but I was still pretty involved. But, as the season wore on and my senior year was kind of ramping up into high gear, I know that I definitely wasn't getting to as many games as I would have liked, but at the end of the day, that one season that we had, like, that was what I needed.
Agreed.
For me to, especially my senior year in high school with basketball, didn't go that hot. So to have that experience that season with you guys, that made me comfortable to close the door on basketball in that sense as me as a player. So
I love that, dude. And it's interesting because I actually had, a really great senior year, like particularly senior year of high school, but I actually still had that itch. You know what I mean? I think part of it was because I was hoping to play in college, but like Princeton was also my number one. I was in this weird space coming out of high school where I wanted to play ball, but I was also like, Princeton is where I want to be. So, that year also satisfied my itch, I felt, in a way.
I thought that too for you.
You know what I mean?
Especially because I remember your senior year, amongst injuries, you just walked away from it.
I did.
But again, I think because you had your itch satisfied, you were okay doing that.
Yeah, bro. That was exactly. And like med school was taking up so much of my mind senior year. I was trying to
applying for law school at that point. Senior year was taken up. So I was and it was like the right time. That was when we could invest in it. And we did. And we had a hell of an experience and a lot of great memories. So
right place at the right time. We'll always remember it, bro. And so, dude, sort of segueing right into the next topic I wanted to ask you all about was law school, brother. So for the listeners, RJ is you're a second year JD candidate at the George Washington School of Law, right? University School of Law. And so I just want to ask you a little bit about that, dude, because I know literally nothing about law school. I feel like my cousin's going actually to Georgetown. So I feel like I want to introduce you guys just in case you ever ran into each other in that scene. But bro, I don't know much about it. So I just want to ask you sort of about your experience there. And so my first question would be, why law in the first place? And have you always known you wanted to do law school? Sort of what was that process like for you? Deciding on that?
It was always in the back of my head. In high school, I loved history, loved politics. Politics were always in the back of my head.
You were a politics major at Princeton.
Right. I was a poli-sci major at Princeton. And now I can tell you now, based on the climate we live in and what I see, even up close and personal down in DC, I had always kind of thought maybe up front in the political sphere was maybe what I wanted to do. Definitely not now.
Wow.
I am good in that department. It's just very from a personal perspective for me, I take a lot of things to heart. And I mean, it's also kind of what becomes a little challenging for me with the law as well, right? I take on cases for people I've gotten to experience, trying to help some employees, federal employees, with my internship that I've been doing over the last year. And I mean, it becomes very personal for me. Like, I want to do right by these people, and to lose or to be critiqued, it's hard for me to just kind of let that bounce off, and not feel like, a deeper sense of either purpose within, what I want to do there, and what they're saying to me. I feel like if I was a politician, man,
right.
the world we live in, social media, the critiques, the attacks, I don't want that. What I will say about law school, to kind of segue back to that point, what I have realized is law, obviously, what is politics? You're drafting the laws, but it's just so much more intertwined in our political world than I think we realize. And the individuals, especially on the federal side of things, that get selected to be judges in our courts, they have, in my opinion, a far, far, far more serious and influential impact on the way that the law really gets shaped, that these politicians draft. And they're never in regular run-of-the-mill cases are never really in the media spotlight, but even the big Supreme Court cases really aren't. You know what I mean? Maybe the media will cover in June, when the biggest SCOTUS decisions typically come down. One or two of those big cases, like I'm sure you're going to hear about the Obamacare case in June, but a lot of those cases really shape and affect the way individuals in this country get to live, what their rights are. And that, for me, like, that's what I want to be involved with. And that is definitely, like, through my first 2 years thus far, where I've recognized, like, this is what I want to do. And I think that I like doing that from, it's called the appellate level.
Okay.
So you go to the trial court, that's where you have your jury typically. And if you lose that decision, you can appeal to typically a 3-judge panel on the federal side of things. And there you're focused more on the big picture legal questions and issues that were in whatever individual case that was below.
Okay.
Obviously, you're still potentially trying to help individuals if it's that kind of a case. But a lot of times too, you could be representing organizations. I do a lot of work with unions, and that also kind of helps take out, like, the fully personal element that I think I can sometimes get a little too invested in. And separate the two worlds a little bit for me. And then, I love those. That's been a lot of the competitions I've done in law school, where you do the moot courts, and that's supposed to be like the appeals court, and you're arguing these legal questions with judges. And actually, last semester, I did a competition with a friend, and it was all constitutional law. My specific issue was if a witness who got COVID, it was very timely, violated a 6th Amendment right that you have to confront the witnesses that are brought against you by testifying virtually.
Wow.
So it was just, like, really timely, really, really fun. And we went all the way to the finals. We argued 6 rounds.
Wow.
And in the finals, I'm arguing in front of 3 real federal circuit judges.
Wow.
And I was just, you're having a legal conversation. It's just a back and forth with somebody who really, at that point, has read your briefs, understands the issues, and it's very big picture in that sense, without you even recognizing it, right? Like, you don't think about that type of a right and how many people that really affects. I mean, any defendant in a case apparently has this right to obviously confront the witnesses brought against them. We didn't have Zoom, though, when the Constitution was written 240 years ago. So how do we adapt? How do we change? And what are we going to say that those words continue to mean? And I'm just obviously just running on a tangent now.
Dude, I love it. It's what I'm here for. It's what the podcast is about.
But yeah, and I think that kind of, for me, the biggest, I think, issue that I have seen now from law school that is always going to be, I think, a strong influence on how I probably vote as a citizen is going to be the type of judges that I think that person is going to nominate to fill vacancies.
Dude, this is fascinating. Keep going.
Because there are predominantly 2 types of legal theory on the federal side of things. And that's what I want to do, federal law.
Okay.
You have one group who, it's originalism and textualism, it's called. So they want to read the text to the T. What is the plain meaning of that text? And if it's the Constitution, what was the original intention behind that text, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the other side, which is more evolutionary. It's more, these words are ambiguous and vague. And if we can figure out a plain meaning, sure. But original intent doesn't always make sense when you look at how our society is drastically and dramatically changed, right? And for me, I definitely fall in and align with the evolutionary side of things. And this was actually, the news was covering this a couple months ago when Amy Coney Barrett's nomination was coming
up. Yep, exactly.
She falls into that textualist originalist camp. And I think personally, my biggest critique of that side of it, right, is personally, I think it's naive if you think that history can provide you with a clear answer of what the original intent even was of certain words in the Constitution or in a law at the time it was written, right? And I mean, the terms are ambiguous and vague for a reason, in my opinion, to let us adopt and adapt to the changes we see in society. That's why that document has continued to live and have relevance, right? And I think it's naive if you think that you can deduce exactly what history, provides as the right answer. And it's kind of masking you and what your kind of policy preference might be. Because the law is all about interpretation. And I would rather wear it on my sleeve and say, what does due process of law mean? Well, I can try to tell you what Alexander Hamilton said in Federalist X, and that's what it has to mean. But at the end of the day, I mean, on that side of the argument, I could say, well, yeah, but look at what James Madison said. So, he kind of is contradicting that. And I could point to James Madison and say, no, this is what due process means. And I'm going to just choose whatever version of history supports what view I think is right.
Right.
And I would rather not mask me and what my preference was as a judge if I was the judge.
Got it.
I would rather wear it on my sleeve and say, no, this is the society we live in. I think that under due process of law, this is what it means. And yeah, so that's, I think, why, on top of just, I think, the need to evolve and adapt, as we're seeing right now, man, the climate in this country is rapidly changing. So to try to stay stagnant and stay, I think, in what those types of originalist and textualist views lead to, it's tough. So but yeah, no, I mean, that's a long-winded answer for Howe's Law School and what it's taught me thus far, but I love it. I was told it was going to be the worst year of my life, year one, and I didn't feel that way at all.
And that's the goal, right? That's the goal.
Yeah. So I had a great group of friends who I'm still really, really close with, and we kind of really just pushed each other through it. It made the good times good and the tough times easy to get through. You're studying together, you're working hard together, and then we're going out and enjoying DC when it was open, pre-pandemic.
Right.
And yeah, it was a great support system, and I think that also helped make the experience so great and so fruitful. So,
bro, thank you for breaking all that down, like in a way that somebody who is not plugged into the whole, law world can understand. Like, I really was following you there, and
good. Because I know that sometimes I explain some legal things at too high of a level. So,
bro, I was just gonna say, like, I remember you were explaining your thesis to me one time, and I was trying my hardest, but I got lost, like halfway through. And so,
Olivia, my girlfriend Olivia, she'll tell me too sometimes, like, I need to understand what you're saying, dumb it down.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. I gotta dumb it down.
So you did a great job there, bro. And I think just one of the nuggets of the many that you dropped there, and I kind of feel silly or stupid just admitting this, but like you said, in popular culture, when we think about politics, like, law is very much not, prominent or salient in the discussion. Like, it's there, right? It's there, but it's not what people are pointing to. Like, the people are pointing to the politicians more so in the headlines and their, stances on certain issues. But just for somebody like me, a lay person in the law world, for you to like sort of explain that interplay between law and politics and actually explain that maybe even law is kind of the basis of all
And I
of
mean,
that, right?
I think
Would that be accurate?
yeah, no, without a doubt. And I think a really important thing to recognize in understanding why that interplay is so important, in my opinion, look at the way that our current political system is not only designed, but functioning, right? It isn't. There is such intense gridlock in Congress. There is such, I think, just intense gridlock in states individually. And on that side of the textualist and originalist argument, what they'll often say is, we're just trying to interpret the law as it was written. And if the country doesn't like that, then they should elect people to go write a new law, achieving what they argued that this was doing, right?
Right.
But I mean, personally, that's just a little too formalistic, because is Congress really getting anything done? And in that vein, what does that mean for the way we interpret law? That means that what should probably be getting done through the writing of laws is now getting done through interpretation of the laws that already exist, and trying to find whatever you want to argue should be the policy in some current law, and what you want to hope is a plausible or valid interpretation of the language written in that law, right? So that also, I think, underscores why understanding the role that judges and the third branch and the legal world plays in politics today really has so much value. Because as long as we're going to be so gridlocked in Congress and I think beholden to our Constitution, we can't embrace the formalistic idea that, well, this is what the text of it says. And aside from, first of all, text usually being ambiguous, so trying to say that the text says one thing, it seems very often the case that it could really mean another, first of all. And second of all right, I mean, this is kind of how we're going to continue to function as a society. It's how we've been doing it for, I mean, think about since the 1950s. Like, where did the end of segregation come from?
Exactly.
It didn't come first through Congress. It eventually, in some sense, did with the Civil Rights Act in the 60s, and the Voting Rights Act. But where did it start? It started in the courts with the big Brown versus Board decision.
Exactly.
With the court recognizing a fundamental right to vote.
Wow.
And it continues that way. Congress hasn't passed a law saying that, this kind of comes because obviously the states can all be different.
Right.
There's no federal law that says you have the right to marry whoever you want. The court said that you have that fundamental right in the Constitution to marry whoever you want. That's just interpreting the word liberty, right? Like, liberty is a loaded word that has a lot of meaning. And again, because Congress is gridlocked on that. Half of Congress would probably be okay with that. Maybe times are changing a little bit on that specific issue, but and you see it on other issues in terms of what the progressive side of the aisle wants and what the conservative side of the aisle wants. So yeah, that's why I think that the focus on judges in the courts is so important, and who is getting nominated there, and I think it's important too. I don't think necessarily Republicans or Democrats are nominating who they think are Republican or Democratic judges. Interpretive style, textualism and originalism usually leads to outcomes that conservatives like. And evolutionary thinking, living constitutionalism, that whole idea of the law can evolve and we can take those big words and interpret them in different ways, usually leads to progressive, democratic, and liberal outcomes, right?
Right.
So each side of the aisle is just nominating judges that interpret the law the way that they want, so that they get the outcomes they want.
Got it.
Not like these judges, in my opinion, are going in there and saying, oh, I was nominated by a Republican and I'm a Republican, so I need to, interpret this law and rule this way to help Republicans. Now, it's the opposite. It is the Republicans and Democrats, choosing judges that they want, that they know will probably lead to the outcomes that they want. So
right. And so as a lay person listening to this, should we pay attention to who our candidates are nominating at different levels in the court? So is there different levels of the court, right? Like federal, and then is there local courts and everything? And so are you able to have access to, like, how does that work? And, I don't know much about this, but
Right. No, of course. So, I mean, so our system, arguably the most complicated in history, because you have the state systems themselves,
exactly,
and then the federal system that governs the federal side of things, right? So honestly, actually, a lot of the state courts have judges that are elected, but again, there's not really influential state court decisions that'll dictate, the way that you live.
Got it.
The rights that you have as a person. Most of that's going to come from the federal side of things.
Okay.
And
which is where you want to be, again,
right?
Federal side.
And on the federal side of things, you have your what are they called? District courts. What are called district courts? What are called your courts of appeals, and then your Supreme Court.
Got it.
And your district court is the same as you would think of like a trial. Typically, you have your jury. Not always. Sometimes it's just a judge in a bench trial. And then your courts of appeals. If you don't like the decision, you appeal it. Usually, you're in front of a 3-judge panel in one of the 13 circuits. And then if you can, you can appeal that decision if you lose again. But the Supreme Court gets to choose the cases that it wants to take. You have your first appeal, you have a right to. You have to hear it. But the second one, you don't necessarily get.
Got it.
And the court only hears about 70 to 80 cases a year. And I mean, it receives petitions for probably over 6,000. So
got it.
The chances of even having your case heard, unless it's dealing with something of such significant value, is slim. But again, that's why, especially I think in the last decade, you have seen the Supreme Court nominee battles get so intense, so
exactly.
There's a recognition now with the gridlock in Congress that this is how we are going to continue to get the results we want.
So interesting, bro. You're like opening my mind out here. I'm learning a lot. Like I learned about these different branches in high school, in my basic class, but just hearing it from your perspective is just super helpful. So,
and I mean, to your point on the question specifically, like, what can our role be in that?
Yeah.
It's so tough because the way that our current nomination process works is, the president gets nominated. The president gets to nominate, candidates, and then the Senate has to approve them. And it's like, you can vote for a senator that you think is going to support, judges of one of the two interpretive styles that you prefer. But again, it's like, no Senate candidate runs on just that platform, right? Exactly. No president runs on just that platform. There's so many issues. There's so many things. And it kind of really raises the question, like, maybe we need some serious judicial reform if this is going to be the way that we, continue to progress, so that individual citizens can have more of a say in the process, right?
Right.
A friend of mine in law school specifically has he's writing his note on this actually, suggested that the Speaker of the House maybe should be the individual who gets to nominate people for judgeships. And it's interesting because the Speaker is up for re-election every 2 years. And then the Speaker has to be chosen by the entirety of the House of Representatives. So trying to get a more an individual that we get more say in over who gets elected to that role every year. But you're still dealing with that barrier of like, but the way that the system works, like, guess what? Democratic Party, if they have the majority right now, Nancy Pelosi was going to be the Speaker. It's not like, and again, we're insulated from that, right? Because the other members of the House get to choose. It's like all of the senators get to choose. And so many issues on the table, right? We're not just going to nominate a Speaker because of who they would have nominated as judges. So that's what makes it tough,
Got it. Very interesting. Well, I'm learning a lot, in this short, brief time. So thanks for illuminating that. So then I guess, one of my bigger questions before we segue out of the law school arena is just, for our listeners out there who, are considering graduate school or professional school, whatever it is, what's been sort of your experiences with the differences between undergrad and your professional school education? And obviously 1 year has been COVID, but just thought I'd ask you about that because I'm hoping to, go to professional school soon. Just wanted to hear your experience on differences, similarities, things you like, things that are harder,
Yeah, no, of
all
course.
that stuff.
I think that personally, it wasn't much different.
Okay.
And I'm going to chalk that up to two things. First, and I think most importantly, the rigor of Princeton, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then second, specifically, the way that my educational track at Princeton took shape.
Okay.
So first, like I've had some good friends who were at, and not to, knock in any way other colleges and institutions, but just schools where the rigor was not as intense as what we went through at Princeton.
Right.
And I think that in that sense, the intensity and rigor of law school was a little bit more for them to adjust to.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I mean, most of my courses that I chose to take were super heavy in reading and writing,
Mm-hmm.
which is exactly what, the legal world and my career will entail, and what, law school has also required of me.
Right.
So it was also a workload in terms of the amount that we got because of the rigor of Princeton, and a work type or a work style that I was, for 4 years super accustomed. It kind of just felt like year 5 at Princeton, to be honest.
Right.
And I mean, I guess my advice to people that want to do grad school, whether it be law, whether it be medicine, anything of that nature, really try to kind of set yourself up in terms of your undergraduate course of study for what that grad school will probably look like, right? Like I think, and I mean, you could obviously speak more to this as the med guy, but taking a lot of labs in undergrad probably, and understanding the time crunch that requires, and the style of work and what that requires in terms of, either way you run experiments and document and then write and break down, your research and your methodology, things like that. Probably taking a heavy, series of courses that kind of focus on those things would then transition well to med school, where you're probably also going to be doing a lot of labs and a lot of tangible work in that sense.
100%.
So
Dead on.
I would say just, as and I mean, I know that there are definitely some people that I'm really good friends with that did like biology as their undergrad major and then went to law school, and like that's totally cool too.
Right.
And I think actually is super important to also, continue to foster, just for the diversity of thought and perspective it brings. And also because in worlds like, IP and intellectual property, there's a lot of science, medicine, pharmaceutical work that a biology background would be great for, right?
Right.
But I would always say to those types of people that want to make that their main focus, make sure you're definitely sprinkling in, heavy reading and writing courses, because you want to be prepared for that, right? But yeah, so that was kind of like my transition.
Dude, I love that. And sort of, as you mentioned, you could do either way, right? The more non-traditional way, or I guess yours is considered more traditional, right? But I think even if you were doing a non-traditional lens, like biology, sort of applying the law lens to that, if you can, in your electives, for example, and like, that's what I found is I wanted to get some psychology mixed in as my major with the pre-med track and everything, to sort of like give me a break in my headspace, but also was trying to take some other courses that would prep me as well for med school. So I love sort of your advice on that front.
Yeah. And I mean, even to that point too, I would suggest then, as one more step, like if you were somebody who was kind of like me and did the more traditional route, like try to befriend some non-traditional people.
Exactly.
Because, like, again, I have one really good friend who she majored in her undergrad in some, biology and science-based things. And again, I'm not a science guy, so if she ever listens to this, she'll probably make fun of me. But but it's just like, from a science background, right? You approach problems from a very methodological standpoint, right? It's very different than the way that I might read a case, and a client comes to you with a problem. How do you address it in writing a legal argument? There are more creative and freelance styles that I feel like probably I have from a rich writing experience, but then there's a more methodological attack and approach.
Yes. So. And that's what I was just going to mention. Actually, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but I would imagine that there would be some value, again, even if you were a biology major, for example, the sort of scientific thinking and methodological approach that you mentioned could help, right? Apparently you're saying there's sort of a creative way to write arguments and more logical way, but I'd imagine there's more crosstalk than we might think. But
without a doubt, a doubt. I mean, and when you read, I mean, for I mean, I'm not saying that people are going to go out and just start reading Supreme Court opinions. I'm of course I do that. But when you read the Supreme Court justices, man, the best writers among them are creative and spunky at times, and they drop these one-liners where you actually start laughing. Like I remember in one case I had to read Justice Kagan, who I think is my favorite justice on the court. Really love her approach, her writing and whatnot. The case was dealing with, it was something to do with like fishery laws, right? And if an individual, like if a fish is a tangible object under whatever federal fish law, I don't remember.
Okay.
In trying to like define whether a fish was a tangible object, she cited to Dr. Seuss, one fish, two fish, red fish, blue fish.
Great
and
book.
I was just like, you're a legend. Like you just dropped the Dr. Seuss site to define a fish.
Yeah.
Like, because again, it's at that point too, it was like her trying to be like, is this silly that we're really having this art? Like, we know what a fish is. So, and then, but you mix that in with a very logical approach to the way you break down the argument, right? And, you know, for X reason, 1, 2, 3, this is why this should be the outcome.
Right.
And, you know, it's easy to follow when it's methodological and structured like that. And then it's enjoyable when you mix in that little bit of creativity, that spunk.
Exactly. Exactly. I love that, dude. I love it. So, yeah. And so kind of now moving outside of the classroom in your law school experience, I know you were, you know, heavy into fitness. You were unreal in the gym at Princeton. I remember you steady dedicated to your grind. So are you still doing that? And sort of what other things are bringing you joy? And bro, you know, we got to talk about Marvel. We got to talk about Wandavision very shortly. So, but just go ahead. Yeah. Tell the listeners a little bit about, you know, any new things you picked up in law school, bro, that you're enjoying that maybe you didn't when I knew you at Princeton.
So I will say from the fitness front, honestly, the pandemic kind of has thrown more of a monkey wrench in it than law school did.
I was going to say.
Because the gyms were closed for a while. So I was trying to fit in a lot of at-home workouts. And then just now they're open, but, you know, how often do you really want to go out and expose yourself like that? So it's just the actual schedule has been a little up in flux. But in terms of definitely, I still try to always, you know, get at least 3 to 4 workouts in a week. And when I'm in the gym, I'm actually not, I did a lot more traditional powerlifting, I would say, in college.
I remember
I've tried to incorporate more cardio into the workouts now and more what I would say is kind of like circuit training.
Okay.
Just because I want to kind of, instead of like put on mass, kind of just cut the body up a little bit more now. And it feels better. Like it feels nice to have the lungs feeling good. And also I'm not playing basketball, so I'm not running like I was on top of the lifting then. So I'm trying to definitely just keep the lungs, you know, decent. But in law school specifically, actually recently, dude, new little hobby. My little brother introduced this one to me over winter break.
Shout out Vinny if he's listening. Shout out Uncle Vicky.
Shout out to and actually his 21st was just this weekend, dude. We went down to Atlantic City.
Okay.
And I got crushed. I lost a fat 500, but dude, so tough. Dude, little brother had the birthday magic going on. So first of all, he hits 21 at midnight on Saturday. Dude was he was in a mode. He was feeling himself. And dude, we come down. My mom showed up like a surprise. Like he had a couple of buddies there. I had a couple of my buddies come and hang out and surprise him. And then, dude, my mom shows up with my aunt out of nowhere.
Wow.
And got one of these like DJs that was like at one of the like little bars that was open, but like spaced out with people with, you know, the tables and stuff for the COVID. They got him to play Build Me Up Buttercup. And dude, my little brother just like goes into the middle of this bar and he's like singing this song at the top of his lungs. Dude, the crowd is loving it. They're getting into it with him. He's about to walk away and one lady grabs him and is like, we want an encore. All of a sudden next, come on, I think it's Eileen.
Come on, Eileen.
Dude, we're all just like right outside like the bar area, just like looking in, all cracking up.
Wow.
The birthday magic just continues. The dude is learning how to play craps for the first time, wins like 500. He's playing roulette and he's playing the outside and he puts it on black for like 6 times in a row.
Yeah.
Hit 6 times in a row, won 200. Goes to the blackjack table. I'm playing with him. I mean, I'm just playing house rules. I get cashed out, easy 100 loss. He makes 250. I'm just like, I don't even get it. I thought if I at least played with you, I would win a little bit, but no, it's just you winning, man. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. But tangent from that little brother discussion.
I love the
So
tangents.
he introduced me over winter break to, I don't know if you've ever played the board game Catan.
Dude, Sarah loves Catan.
Dude, I love it. Dude, I got Olivia super into it. I got her brother super into it.
Okay.
We got her parents into it. I mean, I've been playing at their house, back it down in law school now. When I'm back in the DC area, I have some friends that really love it. So we've been playing a lot of Catan, which has been a lot of fun. What a great game it is, man. The strat, I love it. I love it. I love that it's different, so different every time. The board is mixed up.
Mhm.
I have won on the craziest of strategies because every game you're just like, well, how do I want to play this? Like,
Right.
what are we doing?
Right.
So that would be a new one. And then, I mean, dude, let's just get right into Marvel.
We got to get into Marvel. But on the Catan front, I literally think Sarah, for the listeners, that's my girlfriend. I think she's literally playing it in the other room right now online.
Really?
Because there's online options. You can play with friends online.
Dude,
so
I didn't even know that was a thing.
I feel like, bro, maybe I could like try to learn and then we could play together and a couple other people, right? Because you need 4. I think you need 4.
It's an unreal game. It is so fun. So like, I love the strategy of it. And then, dude, they have like all these different versions. Like, there's a Game of Thrones one, and like
Amazing.
the rules are different, and like the wall is like part of the game. And
wow.
like, yeah, I want to learn it because it looks so cool. But I'm a big Game of Thrones fan too. You know, rest in peace, season 8. I'm never gonna, really talk about it. But
yeah, bro. And I think last thing on the board games front, I think it's just a great way to, just unplug from the electronics and a social aspect that we can do, with who's ever in your pod or whoever you're hanging out with. So I want to get more into board games. I'm gonna look into Catan, Arch.
It's a great one. I recommend.
Bro, all right, let's get into it, dude. Let's get into Wandavision, the state of the MCU. What's going on,
dude,
brother?
I want to say right at the front.
Yeah.
I remember at the end of, phase 3 when Endgame came out, when Spider-Man Far From Home came out, it was clearly the end of that story.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember a lot of people after Marvel then announced like all of the projects it was going to be doing.
Yeah.
These people were like, I feel like we might get a little oversaturated with Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
And like, Marvel's run is like feeling like it's been great, but like it might, come to an end here.
Okay.
I actually think the pandemic was the best thing to happen to it, because then we get starved of Marvel content for a year and a half.
And we're clamoring.
Comes back, man. It's fantastic. And we're all super in again. And like, because we didn't have it for so long. If we had rolled into, another 2 movies and 2 TV shows last year, and then this year now we would be having like 4 movies and like 2 TV shows, maybe then we would have been like, all right, like there's so much Marvel to like stay on top of.
Yeah.
But right now it's like, no, give me more. And I think Marvel's going to ride that for the next couple of years again now.
Brother, I love that point. And because it's a point that comes from a different perspective of mine, because as you know, I was living under a rock for, 12 years.
Yeah.
I don't know what I was doing. I saw Iron Man 1, dude, but I literally did not see any other Marvel movies from then on. And I loved Iron Man 1. So again, I don't know what was wrong with me. I was just under a rock. I don't know what I was doing. Somehow avoided spoilers for everything. But for the listeners, they got to know I'm a bandwagon fan. So I don't have that perspective of like, I binged all the movies. Yeah, go ahead.
I feel like and you know me as a super Marvel dork, love it. But for me personally, as a kid, I had seen Iron Man, like you were saying, maybe when I was like 12 or 13.
We were like something like that.
And it was like maybe 2 years after it had come out or something. But I wasn't like invested in it until specifically Avengers. And when Netflix, like the summer of 2012, dropped Avengers on Netflix, and I watched it and I was like, what is this? I absolutely love it. And that was, I think, when Netflix dropped Avengers. Actually, it might not have been in 2012 because the Avengers came out in 2012. So it would have been summer of 2013.
A little bit later.
And that was right after Iron Man 3 had come out. And that was the first one I saw in the movie theater.
Okay.
As a kid, I loved the Spider-Man comics.
Mm-hmm.
And I read a lot of Spider-Man comics as a kid. And therefore loved those movies.
Right.
I didn't really know any of the other characters, I would say, outside of him. Saw Iron Man 3 with my buddies in the movie theater and was like, this is sweet.
Right.
Avengers drops on Netflix. to this, I think I can quote that movie because I probably watched it 45 times that summer. I would just be like going to bed at night in the basement and like throw it on.
Right.
And then I like went back, rewatched all of them. And then ever since, man, I haven't missed one in the theater. And it's just, it's like, what I love to is it's an experience now, man. Like you're going with a group. It's a cultural phenomenon.
It is a
Everybody
culture.
loves it. And it's just like, all right, how are they going to outdo themselves now? Because they just keep upping themselves.
Raising the
it's
bar.
incredible.
Bro, like, and you know, I'm the biggest loser in this scenario because I didn't see any in theaters. Like, God, what is wrong with me, bro? But so I binged them all for the listeners. I binged them all in like 2019, 2020, saw Endgame, you know, last year, like in April. And bro, I agree with what you're saying. I think the COVID factor, didn't even think of that, is going to help them continue their rise.
Yeah.
But also, bro, what do you think about the fact that the universe is expanding now to hopefully the multiverse? And there's just so much breadth and so many characters that they can explore the storylines of, that for something like, I don't know what you felt about the most recent Star Wars movies, but the last one I did not like very much. And I thought that Star Wars, you know, might have just stayed, you know, a little bit better if they kept the original 6. I don't know. That might be a hot take. I don't know. But I think Marvel might have the best chance of anybody to continue past what we thought was the golden age, right, of the Infinity Saga. I think, bro, WandaVision is incredible. They're going to keep getting hot with it.
I mean, so before we kind of get into a little bit more detail on WandaVision specifically,
Wanda.
here's to the Star Wars point. I think that this kind of goes back to my point about the oversaturation, right? Like, we got 5 movies in 5 years, and we got a great television show on. Now it's on Disney Plus. I don't know if anybody is a fan of Star Wars: The Clone Wars and Star Wars Rebels, but if you're a Star Wars fan, dive in because they are both phenomenal.
Right.
And Disney, in my opinion, Disney's hits were when it was playing inside the main 6 movies. The Rebels TV show is right in between episodes 3 and 4.
Exactly.
The
Clone Wars 2 and 3.
The Rogue One is right before episode 4.
Yep.
Solo was in between episodes 3 and 4. Like, there was a lot of great material to explore there that they've knocked it out of the park. And, you know, and then you have Mandalorian now, where they've just totally done their own thing, and it's been great. I don't know, like, I feel like the new trilogy that came out, I got mixed feelings on it too. I think I had mixed feelings on episode 8. I liked 9, but it retconned so much 8, so I don't know how much I liked it.
Yeah.
And I just feel like they were trying too much to not only like give us nostalgia of the original movies, but really kind of replicate the original movies, like kind of plot lines and through lines. And their other material has like gave us like bits and pieces of the nostalgia, the references, but have been new and creative. And that's why they have been successful. Like, you look back, episode 7 is like a repeat of episode 4, man. It's not really different. Like, and that's, I think, what our issue with some of the movies was, because then it's, you know, moving from that front, like, all right, we've seen this battle, the Empire, the Rebels, like, just kind of feels like on repeat. Whereas with Rogue One, like, that was fresh, that was new, but at the same time, oh my God, we're at Yavin Base, and I'm seeing X-Wings, and I'm seeing C-3PO and R2-D2, and it's great, and I get that whole nostalgia bit, but at the same time, like, who are these new characters? What is this new storyline? Absolutely love it. So I think that is where they have succeeded, and I think that you kind of recognize now that they're playing into that a little bit more.
Yeah. And just while, on the Star Wars piece before we jump to Marvel, because, I could literally go on for days, and I know we're like pretty much over an hour now, but let's keep going because we need to talk WandaVision. Bro, I felt like, and people who listen to this might have heard me say this a million times, but I like loved episode 8 because that was The Last Jedi, pretty sure.
Right.
Get to 7, 8, 9. And because I felt like they did away with the whole, you have to be a Skywalker, you have to be this elite bloodline narrative. I was all about it. Like, everybody hated it. Well, I guess it was more divisive, but I was all about it. And then they just completely, threw that all away in episode 9 and just went back on the narrative. So I agree. What your point there basically is saying that you want to mix in some of that nostalgia and that traditional narrative, but also you got to build something new.
Right.
Which brings us to WandaVision, which, bro,
talk about new and refreshing.
As new and creative and refreshing as anything could possibly be.
Yeah. I mean, and you know that they smashed it out of the park again so I'm watching the finale with Olivia the other day.
Yep.
And, I mean, my girlfriend was not the biggest. She didn't watch any of these movies. She to this day probably wouldn't have watched any of these movies if it wasn't for me making. But I mean, dude, when we go to see Endgame and Tony dies, she is bawling her eyes out in the movie theater.
I cried my eyes out.
WandaVision in the finale, their goodbye, she's bawling her eyes out. Or like she goes to me this morning, I felt that same feeling I felt when Tony died. So I was really just trying to hold it together, but like I couldn't always control myself. And I'm like, dude, if you got a lay fan like that who is just enjoying these movies and feeling so invested in them in that sense, like
absolutely,
you're crushing it,
brother. And just
I mean, I think Elizabeth Olsen's got to be maybe like sneaking into my top 3 celeb crushes all of a sudden because
facts.
She just crushed it. The performances were incredible. That outfit, I was like, woohoo!
Bro, yeah, she was looking very beautiful. Can't lie. Lie. I told Sarah that. I was like, she's looking great. Like
Olivia was like, oh, right, calm your roll there. Yeah. That. And I was like, babe, I think that you're probably feeling whatever I'm feeling because look at that.
She's just so cute and just so endearing. She's great. Have you ever seen her interview? She's
awesome. Is a great word for her.
Yes,
character.
Yes.
And now so developed, which is so fun. And I mean, dude, give me any type of philosophy scene with Vision again.
Theseus
up those scenes.
Oh my God, brother,
incredible. And I mean, dude, this guy just drops mad wisdom. And I mean, it wasn't just this show. You go back in some of the prior movies and you go back to those Vision scenes. My guy's dropping pearls left and right. But
people say, bro, it's so funny, and I think this is pointed and intentional by Marvel that they make the character who's an AI and not actually a human have the most humanity and most insight into the human experience, right? Like, what is grief but love persevering?
I think I got that tattooed on my back next week and get an appointment.
might as well, right? Like, I don't know. I totally agree there, and just it was so innovative with we didn't know what was going on early on, 100%. The sitcom. It was a false reality, an illusion. It just kept us guessing. When's the last time we were waiting for, every Friday to watch a show? And that sort of speaks to what you were saying with the pandemic. They were able to do that. And that anticipation was awesome.
And then, I mean, dude, the best part was you watch the episode and then you jump on Twitter. And the content was just incredible.
YouTube, Screen Crush, you got the Easter egg videos.
And then, dude, like the other great thing about it, so many, I think that this is kind of actually for me and my personal experience with the MCU has kind of been, I think, I'm a little bit bummed about it to this extent now because I'm so invested and I'm so much more familiar with a lot of the source material and the comics and like the lore. It was kind of clear that Agnes was going to be Agatha, right?
Right.
So you saw that reveal coming. But, dude, just give me a banger that's like going to like be on the top 10 of Spotify song introduction to let me know I was right and still blow me away somehow.
Yep.
I mean, that was awesome. And like to that last point too, I remember like, for example, when I went to the movie theater to see Captain America: The Winter Soldier, I wasn't as invested in the lore then. So when Bucky's mask comes off and Cap is blown away because the Winter Soldier's Bucky,
right?
I'm in the theater and I'm like, holy shit! Like,
same.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know any of that. Yeah.
Versus like again, now that I'm so invested, some of those reveals are more easy to see and to anticipate. But yeah, man, I was just everything about it. The emotion, the writing was brilliant. The dialogue was brilliant. The delivery, the performances, the action, budget on it must have been crazy because the CG is incredible.
Right. I agree. Like 10 out of 10, bro. And I was actually going to ask you about that, and you brought it up unsolicited. I knew nothing. Again, I'm a bandwagon MCU fan. Just watched the first, 20, Infinity Saga with knowing nothing about the background. And so I'm blown away. I have no idea what's going on at all. Just
Right.
enjoying it. And then obviously now I'm like super invested in watching all these Easter egg videos, and they were explaining how Agatha would be involved. And,
Right.
but I don't know what you felt, but even though that sort of, twist was a little bit less of a twist for me, I still enjoyed it thoroughly.
Dude, the
And there was
delivery was
more. Yeah.
it was the delivery. It's
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
the innovative delivery. Like
Yeah.
Thanos didn't have a freaking top 10 billboards, song that
Exactly.
slaps. Like I was like, is Agatha all of a sudden my new favorite villain? I don't know.
Nobody can take this guy away. I love this guy. For
And I
for
mean,
the
to that point too, though, right? Like it's you think back to Thanos and the snap. Like I had read I own the Infinity War, like the comics from '91.
Wow.
I had, when I was younger, really like dug into that. So
Right.
you have an idea of what's coming here. Like, but to actually have him do it, that delivery is just why they keep winning, because the delivery is absurd. And what I will say too is this, for kind of just to bookend the WandaVision chat,
Right.
for all the people that thought that their performances were stellar and the development and the love story there was, incredibly done here, go back and watch Infinity War.
I can't
The
feel you.
the
Oh, or
final
all I feel is you. I forget what she says,
But
but oh.
dude, that final scene where he's like, you have to do it. You have to kill me right now, because this is the only way we're gonna stop him. Her acting in that scene is dumb incredible.
Apparently it was improv, dude.
It was all, and that's the other thing. It was all improv. Like their chemistry then was just unreal. So it makes sense to do a show with them and
Right.
explore that chemistry more and let them flesh it out.
Right.
As the fantastic actors that they are.
Right. Two things, bro. I think one of them being, what you said earlier about now we're so much more invested in the characters. And I love that, right? Because now we can go into the next movie theater or watch the next movie whenever, it happens. And we see Wanda on the screen. We're like, yo, like, I missed you, Wanda. Like, you're here again. And we know so much more. And I think Marvel, again, is continuing to reinvent the wheel, where they're saying, we don't need to just do movies forever now. We can sort of develop people in these side shows that feed into the movies. And that's given us more fresh content. And I just have the most trust in them, like that Marvel team and the
Kevin
people
Feige,
at Feige and Victoria Alonso. And
I put that GIF up, that GIF. I don't know. That's a big debate. I don't know how you say that. GIF
I don't know how to say it.
Of that guy where he's like, I was like, Kevin Feige, this is me to you every Friday, brother. Like, it's incredible.
God Feige. Bro.
But I think, dude, another thing to appreciate here, especially about their innovativeness on this show, is this isn't the first time Marvel's recreated the wheel.
Correct.
Like, you go back to some of even the oldest movies, dude. Like Cap 1 is like a World War II movie,
and that's so ballsy.
Awesome
that's so ballsy.
And then you get to Cap 2, and it's like a spy thriller, espionage, classic. And then you jump to Captain Marvel is like a play on like the 90s and like a different type of genre piece in that sense. And Black Panther is exploring this like African utopia and like what that could look like. And if all of history had gone that way instead, and that was so different and unique. And it's like they've been doing these different types of projects. They've been recreating the wheel on them, and they're just gonna keep doing it. I've read that the Doctor Strange movie, Into the Multiverse of Madness, where we're gonna get a lot of great Scarlet Witch and Wanda, is gonna be horror. Like, it's awesome. And like, as long as they keep doing that, we're gonna keep coming back because it's gonna be fresh.
Because I think they're ahead of the game, exactly what you're saying. And Ragnarok's like a comedy, a space comedy.
God, Ragnarok is like the greatest buddy comedy ever.
So, bro, and going back to it, right, where you were saying that connection between Bettany and Elizabeth Olsen with WandaVision, right, you saw it in Infinity War, but I've been watching all these documentaries just about how Tony Stark really, casting him, Robert Downey Jr., was such a gutsy move, because at that time in his career, he was a little bit more controversial. He's not a household name because of his past. And Marvel was like, this is the guy. And look at how he's just exploded the franchise. And apparently made all these actors and actresses feel so welcome on set, and he wanted to bring them there and just build that camaraderie. So it's almost like a good restaurant. Like the word of mouth is just getting better and better, and
Oh yeah.
the
And I
collaborative
mean,
atmosphere
when you think about casting, they just continue to knock it out of the park,
every
man.
time.
Like you can't picture anybody else as Captain America.
No,
Like Chris Evans is Captain America. You can't picture anybody else as Thor, especially the reinvented comical Thor. Like that is Chris Hemsworth, dude. Tom Holland as Spider-Man. Like we finally got the kid Spider-Man, where you
awkward
got
Spidey.
the nerdy high school kid mixed with like the Spider-Man like spunk, all wrapped in one. Like it is incredible that they just continue. And even characters that did play lesser roles at first, right? Like Elizabeth Olsen or Paul Bettany. Like Paul Bettany was Vision's voice. Who knew
Jarvis? He was Jarvis.
Right. And who knew that this is where he would land and how great he would be? Well, like, how did they? I don't get it. And then you have that great scene in the finale where he says, like, you know, I was a voice with no body, a body but not human. And then he like shed the tear, and then he's like, what will I be next? And I'm just like, take all my money and give me more.
Bro, that's what I was saying. I was saying to Sarah, like, I understand you guys want to release a movie in theaters and we all want to see him in theaters, but brother, Black Widow is supposed to come out last year. I know y'all got the footage. I'll pay 100 beans to watch that on Disney Plus.
Say,
I'll pay whatever you want.
Throw it up on Disney Plus. Make me pay a fat 30 for it. You know I'm paying it.
I'll pay 30 easy.
I mean, I don't. And then at that point too, it's like, especially right now in the middle of the pandemic, it's not like you could have like 10 of your guys over and split the cost. So you might not really see that much of a difference from what you would have pulled at the box office and what you might pull from Disney Plus if you do that.
And you said we're all starved, brother. So we're all gonna drop the cash, like.
And especially after WandaVision, man, everybody's in. We're in on this now,
bro. I could go all day about it, and I love that we're finally connecting over this because I was, living under a rock.
You were living under a rock in college. So
what I was doing, man, but. It's such a source of joy for me. So I love that we can share that, dude. And bro, it's been an absolute pleasure. I feel like, we've gone over time, but I could go forever longer, but we want to make sure some people actually listen. So we don't want to drop a 4-hour pod.
Of course.
You know what I mean? But bro, this has been awesome. Good luck with the law school journey, dude. Keep crushing it. And we'll obviously stay in touch, brother. Thanks for coming on.
I appreciate it, brother. Thank you for having me. Had a lot of fun.
Yes, sir. All right, signing out.